Hello everybody, my name is Randy, coach of your Washington Why Naughties. Oh my god, that is the most generic Draft League intro I've ever fucking done. But we're back for Draft League! Woo! PBAL, owned by Aaron12. We knew each other back in SDA, which was the first league I ever uploaded.
Flashback.
Willow, always.
End of flashback.
Now we are back in his league, the PBAL, the Midnight Division. I don't know what PBAL stands for, and from here on out, I'm gonna call it the PBAL, because that is the most convenient way to say it. So, first things first, let's get into the draft conditions. So, we have 120 points, 16 player draft pool, snake draft, typical first to last, and then last to first, and the repeating rounds, and it keeps going on, etc., etc. Good old draft league rules. But the Terra rules are a bit different from last season. The UPA, which was Ubers, so it was low tier Terra, like very, very low tier Terra. For this league, it's more like mid tier Terra, 13 and below ish. And once again, we're doing the MBC rules of 1 stab typing and 2 other types, so SPL rules, not BBR rules, just whatever other fucking draft league you can think of that does that, all the Pokemon ones basically, PPL, SPL, yeah, those. Our draft position was first out of 16th, which was incredible. If we take a look at the draft board, we can see that Xianpao was on the board. And y'all know me. Y'all saw last season how much I love that Pokemon. So yes, we are running it back with the man himself, overpowered the Xianpao. I love this dude. A Pokemon with 135 speed, 120 attack with Sword of Ruin. Insane. Hits insanely hard, outspeeds most of the meta besides Dragapult and like the Electrodes, which are like the only relevant ones, and even then the Electrodes aren't extremely relevant. It's an incredible speed tier, and it has all the coverage it needs. Ice Dark is incredible, and nothing's really changed since UPA, really, because the importance of Dragon and Psychic, at the cost of those, we get being an Uber in Standard. I will always say this mon is too broken for Standard, yet here we are. I got the luck of the draw, I got first pick, so I'm gonna pick the most broken shit on the board. Now yes, there is a Zamazenta Crown, I could have gotten that, but I just decided not to because I really wanted to run it back with this Pokemon. I love having just the fastest things, because that allows me to better control the environment I'm in. Thanks to the fact that I'm first pick, it does complicate a bit of things, because being first means you have all the other 15 people going not once, but twice. So first goes, then second, all the way to 16th, then 16th all the way to second, and I'm left with the scraps. But thankfully, there was one thing on the board nobody noticed. The wonderful, little, adorable, cute synonym adjectives, Ogerpon Wellspring.
Is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness!
11 points. 11 points for Ogerpon Wellspring is insane to me. I don't think a Pokemon with 110 base speed, 120 attack, with a raw 20% item boost, with amazing offensive typing, an amazing ability in Water Absorb that makes it immune to Scald, and makes it counter basically every single water type in the game. The only disadvantage this Pokemon has is not the inability to hold items. So I can't hold heavy duty boots if I want to pivot a lot. I can't use a choice band, use a choice scarf, that's out of the picture. But at the cost of that is still an item that gives you a raw 20% damage boost to every move that you have. I think that is insane with the innate ability to counter water types as much as it does. This thing is an incredible sweeper, incredible breaker, incredible pivot, And just like, it has synthesis, it can be bulky. It shouldn't, probably, but it can. It can do all of those things for only 11 points, and it synergizes so well with Xianpao, because one of Xianpao's biggest problems is bulky waters. Now, what is Xianpao's other biggest problem? Physically bulky mons. And with Ogerpon, that can also kind of come up sometimes. So, in the wheel, because we do have wheel pick, because we go from 2nd to 16th, all the way back to 1st, we get 2 picks back to back so that the draft can continue smoothly with no one having a disadvantage. But what this allows me to do is get 2 Pokemon that perfectly synergize with both each other and the team, which gives me a lot of control over the draft. And thanks to this, I also picked up a fairly well-priced Pokemon. I wouldn't say this Pokemon is too overpriced, too underpriced, and I felt like having a good Terra advantage would be amazing to start the draft with, because something I noticed over my PUPA season is every single time I went into a match, I felt like I was in a disadvantage when it came to Terras. So I want to remedy that this season by getting a Terra really, really early. Now, I was looking at Galarian Moltres for a long time, but then I saw another Pokemon who I really like and I've never gotten to use, and I got Terra Reuniclus. Now, how does this pair well with Ogerpon and Xianpao? Well, Ogerpon can kind of take care of like steel types, I guess. I mean, it's a resist, but it works way better with Xianpao because Reuniclus can come in on the fighting types and absolutely take advantage of them. And I remedied this even more with my choice of Terras. So one of them was Fairy, because Fairy allows me to beat the dark types, the bug types, psychic Pokemon with a Fairy Terra, very generic thing. You guys probably understand already. But Fire it fits Reuniclus's specific arsenal a little bit more. You have the immediate advantage of having a fire typing plus Magic Guard, which means I can be a fire type that can hold any item without being weak to Stealth Rock, which is automatically a good advantage. Also allows me to beat steel types, which I thought was important with Xianpao on the team, and it's good with Ogerpon because Ogerpon's problem is bulky grasses. Fire allows me to beat said bulky grasses if I so need to. So I think with the Terra typings, with the immediate pivot that I have with Ogerpon on this team, I feel like this offensive core of Pokemon is all off to a great start. All I need is like a few more pivots, a few more supports, and hopefully it'll be fine. Now, for my next 2 picks, I saw my initial core and I was like, Hazard Stack would go perfectly with this. On this draft, I really want a Pokemon that can pivot and Hazard Stack really, really well, because what that does for me is it allows me to both get my offensive pieces in more, while also letting me set up hazards to pressure the opponent to switch out of my stuff and get punished for it. Or force Heavy Duty Boots, which means I'm not forcing Scarf on my Xianpao, which means that I'll be able to overwhelm my opponent. This headspace is what allowed me to think of the perfect Pokemon to pick up for my next pick, which is Sandy Shocks. Now, some of the most potent offensive type combinations in draft are Ice Electric and Ice Ground. Sandy Shock Xianpao is an incredible offensive core. Volt Switch from Sandy Shocks, able to hit the water super effectively, and get in my Ogerpon on said waters really, really well. Or, if they decide to switch out, they're probably going to switch out into a bulky grass type, or ground, both of which Xianpao beats. So if I can beat the things that come in on Sandy Shocks can also beat the things that Xianpao beats. They form a very, very good offensive core alongside Ogerpon, which also has U-turn. And the Hazard Stack utility of Sandy Shocks is also amazing. It gives me really reliable rocks, really reliable spikes, but something that I think is underrated about Sandy Shocks is its screen's capabilities. It gets both light screen and reflect, is decently bulky, and decently fast. Like, it just has really, really good stats all around, except for attack, which it doesn't need. which could allow me to go into Xianbao or Ogerpon or Reuniclus, all of which have setup potential, and start going ham. Like, Hazard Stack, Screens, Hyper Offense is absolutely like a good Gen 9 approach. And this is why I picked Sandy Shocks. But I don't want Sandy Shocks to be locked into that Hazard Stack role. But I also wanted a more bulky spiker for my next pick, because I saw, getting offensive spikes and bulky spikes allows me to be more versatile with my hazards, and makes stacking said hazards way easier, since I'm more easily capable of staying in for more turns to set up said hazards. And that's why we picked up 10-point Skarmory.
Is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary Krabby.
Oh my goodness!
I think this is also a crime. I don't know how anybody saw this on the board and was like, nah, I'll get, like, Corviknight, which is 4 points higher, doesn't have Hazard Stack. Yes, it has Pivot. Like, yes, Corviknight is probably the objectively better Pokemon. I just like Skarmory way more for what it does on this team and just in general. Skarmory gives me my first dedicated defensive piece, I would say, because all the others, like, can kind of sort of be defensive, especially Reuniclus, and except for, like, Xianbao, probably. But they all still are majorly offensive Pokemon. This is my first, like, dedicated, like, yes, I am running defensive on this. Which, yeah, it just does good things for my team. Good Fairy Resist for Xianbao, good Grass Beater for Ogerpon, and not exactly a good Ice Beater, but I mean, yeah, I already have Terrifier in my Reuniclus. Ice Weakness is going to be one of the most prevalent parts of this team, unfortunately. But hopefully we should be fine. I think we'll be fine. But yeah, Skarmory does what Skarmory does. Roost, Spikes, Whirlwind for good phasing, which I think is very important this gen because of the potency of setup sweepers. I think Skarmory's utility is incredible. Its defensive typing, incredible, and it's not even that passive. So, tell me why it is 10 points. I genuinely want to hear out, because I think it is a fucking crime that I'm on as only 10. With those picks, I was like, okay, Rapid Spin would help me a lot here. Rapid Spin, Pivot, a bulky water so that I'm not pressuring Ogerpon to be bulky. This is gonna be I'm looking at Blastoise, and it's just like it does everything that I wanted to do here. Unfortunately, Blastoise got sniped. So there's nothing on the board that really does what Blastoise does. So I had to look around for other things. And I saw a fighting type that fits my team on the board pretty well. Gives me more offensive pivot, gives me knockoff, which is great, and a really good speed tier that I don't have yet. So I decided to get Mienshao. Good fighting type, has knockoff, CC, regen pivot, which is not as good on my team as it would be on like other regen spam teams, but it still has its utility. I got this thing in UPA as a transaction, and for the matches that it came to, it did work. But I unfortunately got it too late in the season for me to fully utilize its potential. So here it is now. I just really wanted to use Mienshao again. It was incredible in UPA, always did what it needed to do, and hopefully it's here to do that thing again. It is my more dedicated answer to Steel type super effectively, since Reuniclus Terrifier isn't exactly the most reliable. And it has good knockoff utility to knock off the heavy duty boots for my hazards to work even better. And just has overall a really decent kit. There's nothing else that I can really say about Mienshao that wouldn't really just be stating the obvious, stating its move pool. It just does what I wanted to do on this team really well. And for the next Pokemon that I got alongside it, another criminally low placement.
Is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary Krabby.
Oh my goodness!
Dunsparce. For 7 points. Now, something I didn't say at the beginning is that we only have 20 points for Terra. And this bond being 7 fit perfectly with my Reuniclus, which was 13. So, 20 Terra points, a steal of a Terra Captain with Fairy and Water, which Fairy I got for the fighting types, and just Fairy's the best type in the game. And Water is also just fairly reliable, helps with the ice resist. That the Terra types don't really matter. Honestly, generally, even without Terra, this mon is 7, I think that's still criminally low. The Dunsparce is so reliable. It's so versatile. It can be offensive, it can be defensive, it can run Specs Boom Burst, Calm Mind Roost, Coil Body Slam, Glare Rocks Utility. It's so versatile, it's so bulky. For only 7 points, I think this mon is worth like 9. 9 or 10, honestly. I think it's super versatile, super reliable, and a pretty reliable ghost resist, too. There's nothing else I can say about the Dunsparce. I absolutely adore this Pokemon. Unfortunately, and ironically, the fact that I've gotten so many steals on the draft board also means that I also have too many points, which sounds really weird, but it was actually getting, like, insane in my mind. The Blastoise snipe really ended up hurting me, because I was like, all the removal that is left is Colossal, and if I get Colossal, there's no other roles that anything can fill that will use up all of my points. And in my brain, not using up all of my points is a nightmare. I need to use up all of my points, or I will go insane. So I was looking at the very top of the draft board and seeing, is there anything that synergizes with my team here? And we got an Amorous. Round 8? Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Round 8 in Amorous Incarnate. I don't know how this happened. Double Flying, I don't care about Double Flying. Enamorous is not a flying type. Enamorous is a pure fairy that is weak to rocks, which is really unfortunate that it is weak to rocks with my less than favorable removal. But it synergizes incredibly well with Xianpao. Both of them can be a little bit to steals, but the thing is, pressuring said steals with each other gives fantastic synergy. What I mean is, like, let's say there is a Registeel. Registeel theoretically can take on both Pokemon, but both Pokemon get non-stab coverage for Registeel. So because of that, if let's say I predict Registeel coming in once with Sacred Sword, okay, now my Enamorous goes in. Pressuring those steel types for both of my top offensive pieces is crazy, because both of them cover different sides of the attacking spectrum, so it's not even like a Skarmory, which I know I have, but a Skarmory or a physically defensive Corviknight, something like that, can wall both of them because they cover different types of defense, which gives me a really potent offensive core. And the fact that I got this round 8, I don't know what happened. Genuinely, I don't know what happened. And alongside it, I was also looking at like top tier fire types. Arcanine unfortunately got sniped, but old Arcanine, that lasted. Hisuian Arcanine. I wish I could have also terraed this alongside my other 2 Terras, but yeah, limited to 2 to 3 Terra Captains with only 20 points, and I think Terra Hisuian Arcanine is banned, so unfortunately that couldn't happen. But it is still a Hisuian Arcanine. You still have that Rockhead Head Smash, which can miss. It's a little shaky. I wish it couldn't miss, but it's fine. But even Rockhead Flare Blitz, just that alone is incredible for steel types to offensively pressure them. Extreme Speed is an incredibly good move, and even defensively, like for fire types that don't get ground coverage, Hisuian Arcanine can absolutely put in work defensively with Intimidate, because Intimidate is just a fantastic ability. And it pairs well with Enamorous too, because Enamorous obviously has trouble with like steel and poison types. Arcanine resists poison, and it might as well be a poison check with how strong those head smashes are, as well as being able to take care of the steals, so that's why it works with Xianpao too. Unfortunately, both of them are weak to fighting, but that's why we have Enamorous, that's why we have Reuniclus. I think all of these offensive pieces work together to theoretically theoretically, in every single matchup, I always have something that goes in offensively. There is no matchup where all of my offensive pieces cannot do something in the matchup. Like, fighting, ice, dark, water, grass, like, all of those types together are going to do work, whether it is together in one matchup or separate over a bunch of matchups. So I'm trying to maximize the amount of matchups where I have a good a very good and very clear win condition, which I think Hisui Arcanine really helps with doing because of extreme speed and all that stuff that I already talked about. But then I started realizing for my last two picks, I don't really have any defensive pivots, because my only defensive Pokemon are Skarmory and the Dunsparce, and the Dunsparce does get Baton Pass, but I don't think I want to be running that on my Dunsparce every week. I want to be running other moves on my Dunsparce, whether it be Rocks, Roost, Glare, like on my utility Dunsparce and an offensive Dunsparce. I theoretically want to be clicking Terra Normal Boom Burst. So I was like, okay, I don't have a Dragon, I still don't have a Grounded Poison, which is really important for Toxic Spikes. You need a Grounded Poison on your team, otherwise you will get fucked by Toxic Spikes. I was looking at the draft board, I don't have a Dragon, I don't have a Poison. Is Dragalge still on the board? And thankfully, oh my god, I'm so happy it was still on the board. Oh my god, I was so worried that it wouldn't be on the board. I was petrified, like genuinely. I was like, I don't think, I'm exaggerating obviously. It's just a fucking game, but like, I really, really needed this Dragalge. I'm so glad I got it. Good Fire Resist, which is not something I can say for the rest of my team. Another good Fighting Resist, which is always good to have. Don't pressure Ryu Nicholas into being the Fighting Resist on this team. And really strong Draco Meteors, really strong Sludge Bombs. It might as well be a Fairy Resist because of how especially bulky it is. Do kind of struggle against physical fairies, but doesn't real trust. And having Flip Turn is just incredible for just pivoting on those fire types, seeing what they bring out. Probably gonna be like a ground type, and if they bring out a ground type, I have a million things to punish those. And by a million things, I mean my top two, but I mean, yeah, it's just an incredible low-tier Pokemon for only 7 points, which, like, isn't as big of a steal as my other things, but, like, are Dragalge and the Dunsparce really the same tier? Like, Terra the Dunsparce too? Really? Okay, I'm gonna stop with it. I've complained about that long enough. It's it's just, I'm really happy with the way this draft turned out. This is, like, a draft I never thought I would get. Like, I thought I was gonna have to go with, like, Weezing and, like, Shelgon as my last two picks. But thankfully I was able to get Dragalge and Wartortle. Blastoise got sniped, but Wartortle didn't, and it was only 1 point. It wasn't even on the draft board until I drafted it, as far as I remember. And little Wartortle is incredible for a 1-pointer. Gives me bulky Rapid Spin, gives me, like, a decently good Fire Resist. It's like, it does everything that I wanted Blastoise to do, but worse, obviously. But it's enough utility for 1 point. Obviously, it's not gonna round up my defensive core or anything, but for 1 point, I think it brings enough value to this team. This full team, I'm so happy with. I have defensive Pokemon, I have offensive Pokemon that work incredibly well together. It's more the offensive part. I don't know why I said defensive first, but having, like, so many valuable Pokemon, like, a really well prioritized draft on my part, personally. Like, getting an Amorous and Hisui Arcanine so late, like, even if the Enamorous was, like, accidental, I kind of just stumbled onto that one, I'm still really happy with that turned out, even if an Amorous is fucking ugly as hell, and I'm gonna hate looking at it on Wi-Fi, but you know what, you gotta do what you gotta do to win, you know, even if it means gouging my eyes out. And with that, I'm really happy with the draft, and I'm really happy to see where it goes. Leave your thoughts on this kind of draft analysis in the comments below, and I'll see you guys for the battle next week.